is heading. We begin this series with the most significant split to have emerged in our society in the last 10 years.
Age is to the 21st century what social class was to the 20th century. It's one of the major fault lines in our society.
Different generations became less aware of each other. Older people became more frightened of younger people became less appreciative of older people.
We killed the crowd!
We had a situation where everybody wanted to be young, but the only people who could afford the lifestyle of the young were the old.
Adults and young people are probably more divided now than they ever were in the past, partly because of the empowerment of young people and the role that youth culture has in dominating society. Town centres are actually a really good example of the way that intergenerational divide has been played out, because we've kind of dropped the bingo halls and like little shops that older people used to really value in their communities. So you find older people increasingly say that there's nothing for them in their town centres.
Oh dear, my bank is now a trendy wine bar.
In recent years, the centres of our towns and cities have been transformed. Now they are devoted to serving the needs of the young and thirsty.
It seemed for a moment any building in a city centre could be turned into a place to get drunk. Banks became bars. Churches. What you've got in most of these regenerated city centres is one bar after the other, and they're selling, and it says, get 3 pints for the price of a tin of cat food, and you just let everyone go.
In a British town centre in the early 2000s, a new divide between old and young was witnessed by alcohol expert Colin Drummond.
Yeah, okay, go on. And I was talking to the chief of police there, who was telling me that because of the massive growth in licensed premises, bars and nightclubs, and the change in the demographic of people coming into the city centre, the police had actually had to create a physical barrier between the younger group going to the nightclubs and the older group who were going to the more traditional venues like theatres and restaurants.
So how did this happen? It was all the result of a bit of social engineering. Back in the late 20th century, young people would travel for miles to attend illegal parties, so-called raves, featuring a mixture of drug-taking, dancing, and electronic music. But while they were doing all these things, they weren't sitting around drinking alcohol. The drinks industry was concerned. How could they tempt the young off the wagon? In the 1990s, they invented alcopops and started adding things to keep the party pumping.
Adding things like taurine and caffeine to alcoholic products was a big way in which you could say, this will give you the kick of a drug and it will keep you awake and keep them in the party mood for longer.
Drinks commercials made oh-so-knowing references to dance culture. Take this beer ad, trying to reach the consumers that other lagers didn't reach. Observe the bright colors.
What's your smiley?
Observe the smiley face. Now look what happens to his head when he takes a sip.
Hey man, get wired.
By the noughties, the young were safely back on the booze. The drinks industry had succeeded in making alcohol cool again. Government was also doing its bit. Key licensing restrictions in our city centres have been loosened up. The idea was that more bars would make town centres more vibrant and bring in a continental attitude to drinking that would change the behaviour of the young.
The idea of that policy is almost charmingly naive. Somehow, all these young British people were going to sit around sipping cappuccinos and having a little tiny 175 milliliter glass of red wine like our French and Spanish and Italian cousins do. But being Brits, we want gigantic glasses of red wine, huge tankards of beer, and just to get smashed.
You know the rest. A familiar barrage of unpleasant images played out firstly in our town centres and then on our TV screens.
This is what happens when you go out and try and enjoy yourself.
You know, all fuses into making British towns highly unpleasant after dark. And the only people who might go into town is to see a cinema, and it's an increasingly fraught journey from wherever you are to go and see that cinema, because there's always single-sex packs of youth behaving in ways that make people feel increasingly uncomfortable.
When it was clear the experiment wasn't going as planned, the scientists began to blame the guinea pigs.
People are rightly fed up. Friday and Saturday night binge drinking that makes our town centres no-go areas for respectable citizens.
It seemed to the government to be much easier to demonise a sector of the population rather than regarding the availability of alcohol as the root of the problem.
A new vocabulary emerged around young people in the noughties that reflected fears beyond drinking. These words told their own story.
Happy slap.
Goggle hoodies. Tinies.
Sexy. Feral youth.
Crackdown on loutish behaviour and nuisance neighbours broke out in the street below his old flat.
Vandals and fudge to court and get them convicted.
They're burning up bins all over there every night and cars.
But this government's crusade against antisocial behaviour has had limited success.
Shop when you come out and you think, oh, you know, you have to step out into the road to get past.
Kids hanging out, and it's quite intimidating.
We have such a hugely negative perception of young people. Young people are feral, you know, young people are part of the sort of broken Britain or whatever the latest slogans are. There are young people who are extremely dysfunctional and dangerous, but they represent the minority. If you read the papers, you'd think that young people were responsible for the breakdown of society. It's ridiculous and it's wrong, and it leads to this culture of extreme paranoia about youth and what I would say is discriminatory practice.
By now, the media had a label for the feral young who seemed to be taking over the streets. Even the greatest villains have to start somewhere. And so it was that at Kent's Blue Water Shopping Centre on the 11th of May 2005, the ultimate noughties hate figure, the hoodie, was born. This was the day they banned anyone wearing a garment with a hooded top.
Prior to the Blue Water case, there were virtually no headlines with the word hoodie in them. Within a week of the Blue Water case, there were headlines in virtually every newspaper.
Soon it wasn't just shopping centres banning them.
We had the example of a 4-year-old who was banned from a sweet shop. We had a 40-year-old woman who was a nurse, was banned from a shop that she'd been going into since she was a child.
The Kidalton chief made it clear where he stood.
And I don't think there's anything wrong with a shopping centre saying, look, I'm sorry, but we just, for the sake of the feeling of safety amongst the people who are using this centre, we're going to say, no, there's certain things we're not going to allow here. And I think that's fine, and I actually agree with that.
Back in Blue Water, one garment was proving very popular.
The sales of hooded tops in many of the clothes stores in the Blue Water Shopping Centre actually went up.
It seems that even hoodies like doing their shopping in a hoodie-free zone.
Hoodie.
Scary created a hit ringtone.
Social scientists started talking about Britain being in the grip of ephebophobia, the fear of teenagers.
Hi there.
Hey, look, it's clean shirt.
Clean shirt? What does that mean? Isn't that good?
How do you get that shirt so clean, mate?
I know it must be difficult being a kid, not a lot of schemes, but I'm just a man. Can't we just... Hey, no, out! Hey, stop.
Meanwhile, a middle-aged inventor from Wales had taken it upon himself to lead the fight back.
We do have the right to make sure they at least have some manners and they're not spitting and shouting and even being physically violent towards shop staff or general members of the public. And that is when my device should be used. It's a sort of security device that fights back a little.
It's getting louder, isn't it?
In his workshop, he manufactured the Mosquito. It emitted a high-frequency tone that the under-20s found highly annoying, but that older people couldn't hear.
It gives me a headache and it can make me feel sick if I'm there for too long.
It's like a dog whistle, and it's called a mosquito. We're saying you're pestilent. My daughter and some of her friends were sitting in a fast food restaurant recently. They had to leave because the sound of the mosquito from outside was so loud. I mean, we have become such a paranoid culture. We have to blame people. We're blaming our young people.
Howard has sold nearly 4,000 mosquito units in the UK. Councils were fitting them to shopping precincts, community centres and in front of housing estates.
8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3.
Well, I won't back down. No, I won't back down. Be around, but I stand my ground. And I won't.
You know what you want to do with that, right? You want to put a banging donk on it. Yeah, that's sick, that is sick.
Next time.
Oh, wicked. Now put a donk on it. Electro. Oh, that's sick, that, mate. Put a donk on it. Techno. Oh, no, that is good. Put a donk on it. Hey, that's good, that, Tony. Ah, sick. Right. What do you like that? Put a donk on it. Electro. Hey, I really like that. Put a donk on it. Techno. That one's good. Put a donk on it. Donk, 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 donk. Put a donk on it.